what do you do if you get someone in your congregation who says, I don't like the way you think about politics, I don't like that, and then they, try to cause a ruckus for you in your church? Maybe that's not happened with your church, but if someone else was experiencing that, what would you maybe suggest to them?
Well, it has happened to me. It hasn't happened on a large scale, but there's a reason for that. And if I were talking with other pastors who were afraid of those kinds of things, I would share the organic nature of how I handled it. So when I first started getting into these kinds of things, hopefully this will answer your question. When I first started getting into these kinds of things, I was unsure about it too. I wasn't sure what I could do, what I couldn't, and I had to study. I had to dig in, namely with the Word of God. But as a pastor, my job is to care for my people. And as I learned, I brought them along with me. So Bible studies, council meetings, congregation meetings, any of these kinds of things. When I would go to DC, or if I would do something in Lansing here in Michigan, or I would do something anywhere, I would tell the people about what I was doing. And I wouldn't just tell them, hey, this is what I did, but I would show them from the Word of God, here's why I did what I did. Here's how I discern these kinds of things. So over the course of the years, I brought the congregation along with me, and they learned and they grew alongside me. So we more became a collegium of God's people who were all of the same mind, and the people who just couldn't exchange perhaps their personal agendas for the faithfulness to the Word of God, which is driving everything that we're doing. Those people left. And there's really not much of a discussion to be had with folks like that if they can't embrace what it is that the Word of God is challenging His people to do and to how to be involved. There's really no discussion, because the Word of God is the foundation for faith, life, and practice. If we're not on the same page in that, I don't know what else to do. But I would encourage guys, you can get through a lot of that just by being open and honest and communicating and catechizing, teaching, leading the people along and keeping them connected to the Word of God all along the way, because that's where it's at.
Yeah, for sure. And just a quick note I've noticed is sometimes, the left, when they see something happening, they see a pastor saying something that they don't like, they then say, how can I take over? How can I get involved more and kick this guy out and he can lose his job and we'll reinstall someone who's more progressive? Whereas sometimes conservative Christians who go to a church, if they think the pastor's off, they'll just say, oh, I'll go to a different church. That's okay. I'll just find a new one and not plug in there, as opposed to trying to change things. And I think the left is much more focused in that groundwork of making that change. And I do think conservative Christian people attending church should say, wait a minute, if my pastor's really good, I need to defend him. If this person is, maybe gone too far off, then maybe they need to speak with them. But I think that sometimes our conservative tendencies tend to lead us to say, well, that's okay if they do that, we'll go to a different church. So how do you get people to stay involved and actually bring the church to a good outcome?
Well, you pointed to something before about people are hesitant to necessarily get up and defend their pastor. Remember, the pastors, a lot of the reasons that they do what they do, at least the squishy ones, the wobbly ones, they do what they do because they are afraid of the people. They are afraid of offending them. They're afraid of losing them, or they're afraid of losing their dollars. The people themselves, the ones you're describing, they can actually help them get over that, meet that delta of fear and surpass it simply by going to them, supporting them, being somebody who maybe is a benefactor for them. So, going to conferences and getting out to DC and doing the things that will help them understand what's going on in our world more deeply costs money. Pastors, I don't know about your pastor, but pastors in my denomination are not the best paid guys. I mean, we don't make a lot of money. So being willing to help pay for things like that, getting them invested. Pastors have a lot of skills. They have homiletical skills, hermeneutical skills. They have all these kinds of skills that can be employed in the world around them. Be someone who comes to them and says to them, the sermon you preached last Sunday, Pastor, the first 10 minutes of that hour-long nonsense. No, I'm just kidding. There's some good stuff in there, Pastor, that people in our community should hear. How about you? I've already talked to the local editor, and he's willing to run that portion of your sermon as an editorial. How about you So be someone who helps connect them in ways. Not only are you going to form a wonderful barrier, a wonderful hedge around your pastor that gives him confidence to use the skills God has given him that he's trained for, but it's going to help bolster his courage to move more and more and more in these directions, so that when those clandestine things start happening behind the scenes, that's cake. That's going to be cake by comparison to the forces he runs into out in the world. I've been spit on before, as just without saying anything at all. That when my people are, if I'm in a struggle with my own people, I have the ability to love them, to care for them, to talk with them. They know me, I know them. I can't do that out there. I can face that in here without losing a whole lot of sleep. Out there, those challenges are so much. Gosh, they're so much worse. And we can help guys become pastors who can navigate those waters.